Ladies and gentlemen, gather close and prepare yourselves for today. We delve into the enigmatic and perilous world of the Genestealer Cults, entities that epitomize the ultimate infiltration force, both grotesque alien terror and human tragedy. A threat that is so pervasive yet clandestine that it exists right under our noses, rotting in the hearts of our cities and biding its time with the patience of the ageless. The Genestealers are corruptors, turning our own against us from within, exploiting love and loyalty to sow the seeds of our potential doom. These cults represent a malignant force, adept at the arts of subversion and psychological warfare. Born from the darkest corners of the universe, their origins are as chilling as their intentions. Turning brother against brother and making enemies of friends, all under the guise of communal uplift and salvation. In our exploration today, we will confront this dual nature head-on, the alien horror that seeks to consume, and the human element that tragically yet unknowingly harbors and nurtures its destruction. Join me as we uncover the sinister mechanisms of these cults, revealing not just how they operate, but why they are one of the most terrifying threats our civilization faces today. So please sit and listen closely. The first documented imperial encounter with a Genestealer cult occurred at the mining colony of Gosar Quintus in the year 680 of the 41st millennia. Initially, Inquisitor Chagrin arrived with a contingent of Tempestus Scions to investigate what seemed to be a distortion of the imperial creed within the depths of the Great Pit. As Chagrin delved deeper, he uncovered increasing signs of corruption. Curiously, his final message assured his superiors that everything was in order and recommended that the Trist dynasty be allowed to manage its affairs. It took a full year before Chagrin's colleagues realized the situation was gravely amiss. A 5-member kill team of Deathwatch Space Marines was dispatched on a deadly reconnaissance mission, only to disappear into the pit. It wasn't until Chaplain Cassius organized a specialized kill team that the horrific reality was exposed. Gosar Quintus was infested with Xenos. Kill Team Cassius battled against hundreds of Genestealer cultists within the tainted realm of the Trist dynasty. Although they survived, the Space Marines were indelibly marked by the harrowing conflict. Most startling was not the discovery of the Genestealer patriarch at the cult's core, but rather the damning evidence found within the mining cult's shipping holographs. Disguised as routine industrial activity, the Xenos-influenced dynasty had spread its malevolent influence throughout the Gosar system and the entire sector. Since then, they have been encountered across Imperial space, and many may still remain hidden. The biological genesis of the cult is a tale of precise evolutionary engineering, reflecting a sinister intelligence and a dark purpose. Originating from the bioforges of the Tyrannid hive fleets, Genestealers are not born, but are meticulously designed for infiltration and subversion. Each aspect of their being, from their DNA's molecular structure to their anatomy's visible features, is tailored to facilitate the hive mind's imperative to consume biomass across the galaxy. At the genetic level, Genestealers are a masterpiece of biological weaponry. Their DNA is encoded with the blueprints for their physical form and behavioral programs that drive them to covertly seek out and assimilate into other societies. Their limb structure, featuring retractable claws capable of both delicate manipulations and lethal combat, allows them to function unnoticed in human settings or switch to combat mode when threatened. Their sensory organs are adapted to detect a range of stimuli that humans cannot, giving them an edge in tracking their hosts, even in the most challenging environments. The neurological framework of a Genestealer is equally complex. It is enhanced to quickly process vast amounts of information, a necessary adaptation for creatures navigating alien cultures and technologies. Moreover, they possess a heightened psychic sensitivity, enabling them to communicate silently and coordinate with their kind across great distances. This psychic capability is central to their role as the vanguard of a Tyrannid invasion, as it allows them to establish a psychic beacon that guides the hive fleet to its next target. Genestealers thrive in the hostile environs of deep space, where resources are scarce and conditions are lethal to most forms of life. They can enter a state of suspended animation, slowing their metabolic processes to conserve energy over decades or centuries of travel through the void. Encased within the hulls of interstellar craft, they can withstand extreme temperatures, radiation, and the vacuum of space. This ability to survive in stasis also enables Genestealers to lie dormant aboard ships and on planets, evading detection by standard security protocols. Their presence often goes unnoticed until their numbers are sufficient to begin an overt infestation. By then, they typically have established a foothold that can only dislodge with extreme measures. The emergence of Genestealers from stasis is timed with predatory precision. Their initial contact with a host society is never random. It is a calculated event resulting from careful observation and planning. Genestealers can sense and exploit the smallest weaknesses in a target's defenses, be they gap in a patrol schedule or vulnerabilities in a spaceport's cargo screening processes. Their infiltration begins in obscurity, targeting isolated communities or peripheral installations where their presence is less likely to be scrutinized. From these beachheads, they start the slow process of expansion, infecting hosts and creating sleeper cells that can remain inactive for years or even generations until conditions are suitable for an uprising. By understanding the intricate details of a Genestealer's biological genesis, one gains insight into their capabilities and the grim realization of their role as the harbingers of much larger and more devastating Tyranid invasions. This biological programming makes them among the most feared and formidable adversaries any civilization can face, embodying a threat that is as insidious as it is inevitable. When a Genestealer arrives at a world ripe for infestation, it seeks out the dark and forgotten corners of densely populated areas, remaining hidden as it readies itself to disseminate its corruption. Like all of its void-born kin, a Genestealer possesses inhuman patience, able to survive on minimal sustenance and wait for decades if needed before initiating its sinister plans. Once it is confident it can secure victims while avoiding detection, it starts to abduct them, infecting each with its alien taint to turn them into unsuspecting carriers for a new generation of terror. For centuries, Genestealers have infected human societies, a sophisticated biological and psychological process characterized by stealth and deception. This process begins with the infection of a host, where the Genestealer employs its genetic material as a pathogen. This alteration is subtle enough to avoid causing overt harm or alerting the host to their transformation, ensuring the host can continue functioning within their community, unwittingly serving the Genestealer's insidious purposes. Those who fall prey to a Genestealer's stealthy attacks are not ripped apart for consumption, as is typical with other victims of the Tyranid species. Instead, they are subdued by the Genestealer's mesmerizing gaze and subjected to a unique form of parasitism. This involves the implantation of the creature's own biomass directly beneath the skin through a ribbed tube known as an ovipositor, in a process ominously referred to as the Genestealer's kiss. This act transforms the victim's body and mind, infusing them with the Xenos taint and compelling them to idolize the patriarch as a divine figure, central to a fanatical new creed. When a Genestealer successfully implants a victim, the horrifying result is the birth of hybrids that are both grotesque and varied in appearance. Common features among these initial hybrids, known as the first generation, include bulbous heads, snarling mouths filled with needle-like teeth, additional limbs with razor-sharp claws, stunted tail spikes, and mottled purplish skin. Each of these features contributes to their chilling and monstrous visage. The mechanism by which a Genestealer rewrites its host's DNA can be likened to a form of advanced viral therapy, but with a malevolent twist. The Genestealer's genetic material integrates into the host's genome at key junctions that influence physical traits and behavioral tendencies. This integration is meticulously calibrated to preserve the host's health and appearance, avoiding detection. Over time, this genetic integration becomes more comprehensive, altering the host's reproductive system to ensure that any offspring will be hybrids, born with a mixture of human and genestealer traits. These genetic changes are underpinned by viral vectors, targeting specific genes associated with immune response, fertility, and neural development. This targeted approach ensures that the host's body does not reject the alien DNA, but instead incorporates it into its germline, passing the alien characteristics to the next generations seamlessly. Hybrids born from these unions are indoctrinated into the cult from the moment of their birth, growing up with a dual heritage that is both human and alien. They are raised in a culture that revolves around secrecy and survival, taught from a young age to conceal their true natures and operate within human society's shadows. These children are often brought up in secluded communes or hidden enclaves. In these places, the cult can practice its rites and strengthen its bonds away from prying eyes. As the hybrids mature, their roles within the cult become more defined, some taking on positions of leadership, others focusing on recruitment. The cult's expansion is gradual, almost imperceptible, with new members often not realizing the truth of their induction until they are too deeply embedded to extricate themselves quickly. This methodical and covert integration into society allows Genestealer cults to grow in strength and numbers until they are ready to strike openly, often timed with the impending arrival of a Tyranid hive fleet. At this stage, the cult's existence becomes glaringly apparent, but often too late for the host society to effectively counteract the entrenched and widespread infiltration. Through these methods, cults insidiously weave their influence into the societies, undermining them from within until they are ripe for the final, devastating harvest by their tyrannid progenitors. As we move to the second and third generations, the alien traits become more pronounced and diverse. These hybrids exhibit more of the physical characteristics of their Genestealer progenitors, such as unusual skin textures, odd numbers of limbs or fingers, or enhanced physical abilities. Their appearance and abilities make them more suitable for tasks that require strength or resilience beyond human norms, such as working in industrial sectors or militant wings of the cult, where secrecy can still be maintained. But a higher level of alien ability is advantageous. These middle generations also serve a critical role in reinforcing the cult's ideology and psychic unity. Their more potent psychic abilities, derived from their closer genetic ties to the Genestealer patriarch, help solidify the psychic network known as the brood mind, enhancing the cult's cohesion and control over its members. When the cult breeds its fourth generation, a remarkable phenomenon occurs. The hybrids revert to a state almost indistinguishable from pure humans. This generational reset is a strategic evolution designed to counteract the growing suspicion or potential exposure that a visibly alien third generation might incur. These fourth-gen hybrids are critical for the expansion phase of the cult. They can spread the cult's influence more effectively and safely because they can easily pass as human. This generation is often deployed into society's more sensitive areas, such as political, law enforcement, or critical infrastructure roles, where they can influence key decisions and facilitate the cult's larger strategic goals. Their ability to blend perfectly with humans makes them ideal agents for initiating covert actions, establishing sleeper cells, or even migrating to new territories to start subsidiary cults. Within the fourth generation of hybrids, one individual invariably manifests psychic abilities and ascends to the role of the cult's magus. These individuals are often accompanied by peculiar psychic familiars, enhancing their mystique and power within the cult. The adaptability of the Genestealer cults through their life cycle allows them to respond dynamically to external pressures and opportunities. For instance, if a cult faces significant resistance or exposure in one area, it can leverage its fourth-generation hybrids to quietly disperse and infiltrate new regions, effectively seeding multiple infestation outbreaks. This ability to fragment and reform makes Genestealer cults particularly resilient adversaries and difficult to eradicate completely. Moreover, the cyclical nature of their generational development ensures that the cult can continuously optimize its integration. Each cycle provides opportunities to refine their approach based on the successes and failures of previous iterations. As a result, mature cults become incredibly sophisticated in their methods of subversion, capable of orchestrating complex, multi-layered infiltration and insurrection strategies almost indetectable by even the most daring of inquisitors or kill teams. As a cult extends its influence deeper into its host civilization, it quietly prepares for the day of its grand ascension. This day may take decades or even centuries to arrive. However, a psychic shadow will inevitably cast itself over the star system, where the cult has taken root. The rise of Genestealers within a host society presents a profound psychological horror and destabilizing societal impact. These cults exploit the deepest aspects of human nature, trust, family bonds, and the need for communal belonging, to weave their dark lies. At the heart of the cult's strategy is exploiting familial bonds. The initial infection often occurs within a family, turning the most intimate human relationships into vectors for the cult's propagation. A family member infected by a Genestealer undergoes a not immediately apparent transformation, making it easier to spread the infection to other family members under the guise of natural biological connections. As the infected individuals reproduce, they give birth to hybrids that are already indoctrinated into the cult's cause due to their genetic and psychic ties to the patriarch. These children grow up with a loyalty as deep-seated as any familial love yet directed towards the cult. This creates a powerful, multi-generational anchor within the community, as the family unit becomes a microcosm of the cult's larger organizational structure. Genestealer cults often mask their activities under the veneer of religious or communal movements, adopting the language and rituals of spirituality or community welfare appeals to wider groups within the society, drawing in individuals seeking solace, purpose, or camaraderie. This facade is particularly effective in societies experiencing turmoil or dissatisfaction, where the cult's promises of brotherhood, equality, and a new order find eager audiences. If you hear rise of star children in your activities throughout the Imperium, tread lightly, as the cult is likely there, and their teachings have come to life. These cults craft narratives that resonate with local grievances, presenting themselves as a revolutionary force against perceived oppression or injustice. In doing so, they weave their members into the social and political fabric of the community, often gaining sympathizers and allies unaware of the cult's true nature. One of the most chilling aspects of cults is their creation of sleeper cells within the host society. These cells are composed of indoctrinated members who live apparently everyday lives until activated by the cult's leadership. Activation usually coincides with the cult's long-term strategy, often triggered by the impending arrival of the Hive fleet, or when the cult is threatened with exposure and needs to seize control swiftly. These sleeper cells can lie dormant for years, making them difficult to detect and root out. Once activated, they execute coordinated attacks or take over critical infrastructure, sowing chaos and disarray. This sudden eruption of violence and subversion from within can cripple a society's ability to respond effectively, demonstrating the profound impact that psychological and societal infiltration can have. As the Tyranid Hive fleet approaches, the cult intensifies its efforts. This phase is marked by a shift from covert infiltration to more aggressive subversion. The cult's psychic network vibrates with urgency, and the Patriarch exerts a more direct influence over its followers. This phenomenon, known as the shadow in the warp, heralds the first sign of the impending doom that awaits. This strange and disturbing presence initially drives soothsayers to madness and incites panic among those attuned to the warp's energies. The Astronomicon, the guiding beacon of the Imperium, first dims and then is completely obscured by the encroaching psychic miasma that spreads across the stars, effectively isolating the system and making it nearly impossible to send reinforcements. At this critical juncture, the true source of the looming threat finally reveals itself. From the darkness, starlight reflects off a flotilla of celestial entities, visible as mere specks in the night sky. While these bodies might initially seem mesmerizing, their horrific nature becomes unmistakably clear as they draw nearer. This is a biofleet of the Tyranid race, arriving not with promises of enlightenment, but with the grim intent to consume everything in its path. As the Tyranid fleet approaches, the Genestealer Cult views this event as the ultimate fulfillment of their dark prophecies. They believe that the Patriarch's kin, unburdened by humanity's flaws, have arrived to elevate the faithful, lifting them into eternal light. As the skies fill with thickening clouds of Xenos spores, preparing the planet for consumption, the cult's world becomes a crucible of ecstatic fervor. True believers proclaim that it is always darkest before the dawn, and celebrations erupt in the streets alongside warlike shouts, reaching a frenetic peak of devotion. When tyrannocytes descend like fleshy meteors from the heavens, the cultists wave their banners high, eager to catch the gaze of what they perceive as their angelic saviors. As the bioship's giant brood sacs burst open, unleashing shrieking blade-limbed war beasts upon the world, a nascent doubt begins to gnaw at the edges of the cultists' fervor. Yet so deeply ingrained is their belief in these star-born saviors that they continue to battle against their own kind, supporting the Tyranid onslaught. As the Tyranid force, a living tide of chitin and fangs, surges over the land, they initially bypass the cultists, focusing on cutting down or consuming the native populations. Guided by the hive mind, the Tyranid swarm does not immediately recognize the cultists as prey. For a fleeting, euphoric moment, cultist and Tyranid fight side by side. However, once the immediate threats are neutralized, the jubilant cultists rush to embrace their distant relatives in a celebratory union, believing their celestial family finally whole. Blissfully unaware of their impending doom, they advance with open arms into the maelstrom of Tyranid warriors. The grim reality unfolds as they too are torn apart limb from limb. It is only then, in their final moments, that the true extent of the cult's tragic mistake becomes painfully clear. What was once unshakable loyalty swiftly turns to panic as the surviving cultists realize the horror of their situation. The mood shifts drastically from triumph to despair, encapsulating the tragic end of their misguided devotion. The ultimate betrayal, however, unfolds both from within the cult and from the forces they once revered. The very beings the cultists had worshipped turn against them in a cruel twist of fate. Those who seek refuge with the Patriarch meet their grisly end instead. Subsumed by the greater hive mind, the Patriarch loses any semblance of individual will, becoming merely another cog in the vast Tyranid swarm, a superorganism whose singular purpose is consuming the galaxy. As the planet's defenses crumble, the Patriarch and its progeny mercilessly turn on their own. Trusted advisors and loyal followers are slaughtered, their last moments marked by a profound disbelief as wicked claws rend flesh and bone. The purer strains born on the planet ruthlessly attack their own cultist parents, their talons and fangs working in deadly concert. Those few cultists who manage to escape the initial carnage attempt to flee, but their efforts are in vain. The downpour of Tyranid spores intensifies, transforming the planet at a molecular level into a toxic wasteland. Amidst this chaos, not only the bodies of the general populace, but also those of the cultists are consumed, broken down into raw materials. They are drawn into the acidic digestion pools that scar the planet's surface, where they dissolve into a grotesque slurry. This biomass is then absorbed through ribbed capillary towers into the orbiting bioships. In this horrific conclusion, the fates of the host population and the cultists are finally and grotesquely unified. Their remains, mingled in the digestion pools, mark the final act of this apocalyptic tragedy. Detecting and eradicating the cults presents a monumental challenge, mainly due to their deeply embedded nature within host societies and their insidious ability to mimic human behavior. These cults are masters of deception, weaving their members into everyday life and making them nearly indistinguishable from loyal citizens until their eventual violent revelation. The primary difficulty in detecting them lies in their covert operation and integration within all levels of society. Early stages of infiltration are challenging to identify as the signs are subtle and often masked by normal societal activities. As the cult grows, its members might occupy positions of power, such as in law enforcement or governmental bodies, where they can manipulate investigations and obscure their activities. The detection is fraught with challenges due to their cunning infiltration tactics. Recognizing the early signs of their presence is critical to preventing their spread and preparing for potential eradication efforts. One of the most alarming early indicators of a cult presence is a pattern of unexplained disappearances within a community. Individuals who vanish without trace might be victims of the cult's initial infection process, or could have been eliminated because they posed a threat to the cult's secrecy. These disappearances are often quickly followed by introducing new individuals into critical societal roles. New social or religious groups that promote intense loyalty or secretive practices can be fronts for the cult's activities. These groups might advocate for radical changes or address grievances that resonate deeply with the local populace. Cults may encourage distrust or disdain for external authorities or groups to isolate their members from influences that could disrupt the cult's control. Given the psychic nature of the cults and their leaders, areas of active infestation might experience unusual psychic phenomena. These disturbances can serve as both a warning and a tool for tracking cult activity. Communities might experience waves of nightmares or shared psychic experiences that reflect the cult's psychic presence. Such phenomena often intensify as the cult grows stronger and the patriarch's psychic influence expands. Individuals sensitive to psychic phenomena may report feelings of unease, being watched, or a pervasive sense of dread that ordinary circumstances cannot explain. Should the cult attract the attention of the Adeptus Arbites, or even more dangerously the Inquisition, and diplomatic manipulations by the Magus or his agents fail to quell the inquiry, the cult may face severe reprisals. These could range from deploying Militarum Tempestus regiments to a precision assault by Death Watch Space Marines. While such formidable responses can potentially obliterate a Genestealer cult, devastating its infrastructure and shattering its base of power, the resilience of the tyrannid species means that the survival of even a single organism can enable the cult to eventually regenerate and rise again. Eradicating Genestealer cults is often a dangerous endeavor, necessitating a multifaceted approach tailored to the unique challenges their deep infiltration into society poses. The strategies for their eradication must be decisive, comprehensive, and meticulously planned to avoid extensive collateral damage and ensure the complete removal of the cult. Precision is key when conducting operations to minimize the risk to innocent bystanders and maintain the integrity of the host society. However, the decision to deal with a cult, particularly when the Ordo Xenos is involved, will often come down to one of two things: brute force or eradication. On Hive Thetis, there was a military campaign against a cult, discovered by the Imperial Inquisition, to exist in the Hive world of Navaria II, and ultimately successfully purged from existence by the Black Templars. The Broodlord and its foul kin anchored themselves deep within the Hive's blackened depths. Removing this taint would take considerable time and effort on the Black Templars' part. The labyrinth of tunnels, accessways, ducts, and forgotten settlements in Thetis's Underhive proved to be a deadly and unique battlefield. Here, the Black Templars, fought terrifying battles in cramped corridors against the Tyranid menace. Slowly and at great cost, each sector of the Hive City was cleared from the bottom up. Hive Thetis, and the entire world of Navaria too with it, was saved from the purging fire of the Exterminatus only due to the singular efforts of the Black Templars. Identifying and eliminating key figures within the cult, such as the Patriarch, Magus or Primus, can create a leadership vacuum that destabilizes the cult. These operations often require specialized strike teams that can infiltrate and neutralize targets with minimal collateral damage. Beyond killing key leaders, dismantling the command hierarchy disrupts the cult's ability to coordinate and execute plans. This may involve raiding known cult strongholds or intercepting communications to capture or kill mid-level leaders. One imperial governor of Saharia became the breeding ground for the cult of the Rusted Claw. This expansive and bold cult scarcely attempted to hide its influence. The planetary governor Enst, reluctant to report the situation to higher authorities for fear of invoking an exterminatus on his cherished world, opted for his own extreme measures. Enst employed his extensive array of servo skulls to conduct secret bioscans across the population, aiming to discern the uninfected from those possibly tainted by the Xenos gene. His urgency is heightened by reports of a Genestealer uprising in the neighboring world of Gord IX, which pushed him to act discreetly to avoid precipitating a similar revolt. In a covert operation, he segregated those confirmed as pure, relocating them to a series of secure underground bunkers. These bunkers are safeguarded by a cellular syringe system designed to be impenetrable to the alien influence. Once confident that his loyal supporters are secured, Enst unleashed a calculated barrage of hyperfusion missiles from his personal armory, targeting all urban areas he has designated on his maps as beyond salvation. The ensuing firestorms persisted for weeks, devastating the planet's surface and annihilating nearly all its inhabitants. Only the most resilient and cunning survive, among many of the Rusted Claw's outrider cultists. The subsequent years, now grimly referred to as the Dust Hunt, are marked by these outriders' relentless pursuit. They scour the post-apocalyptic wastelands, systematically seeking out and infiltrating the enclaves of pure-blooded survivors. One by one, these refugees fall, their occupants subverted and assimilated by the persistent agents of the Rusted Claw. Within a decade, even Governor Enst, isolated and besieged, succumbs to the insidious doctrine of the cult he once fought to eradicate. The struggle against Genestealer cults, with their capacity for infiltration and subversion, brings to light some of the most challenging questions about the nature of trust, loyalty, and identity in any society. These cults challenge the physical security of the worlds they infest and undermine the social fabrics that bind communities, making their threat as psychological as existential. The presence of Genestealer cults exposes a terrifying vulnerability. Trust becomes precarious when the enemy can wear the face of a friend, a neighbor, or a family member. How do we balance the necessity of trust with the imperative of vigilance? How do we protect ourselves when the threat arises from within, possibly from those we hold dear? The fight against the cults is not just a battle for survival, but a call for deeper introspection about the values we cherish and the nature of the societies we wish to live in. It is a stark reminder that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, not just against external threats but against those that may arise from within the most trusted circles. As we consider these questions, let us also ponder the measures we are willing to take and the sacrifices we are prepared to make to preserve our way of life. As scholars, strategists, and defenders of humanity, our role is not just to study and understand the nature of our enemy, but also to forge new ways of thinking and fighting that can preserve our core values. The fight against Genestealer cults is a war for humanity's soul, as much as it is for our survival. It demands vigilance, resilience, and a deep commitment to safeguarding what makes us human. In this ongoing struggle, let us arm ourselves with weapons and knowledge, and let that knowledge guide us to act with courage and discernment. For in the grim darkness of the far future, our greatest weapon is our unyielding spirit, and our greatest victory will be to endure without losing ourselves. Thus armed, we continue the fight, not only for our lives, but for the very essence of our humanity.